the rest of all what happened until today, peace seems to be elusive. Why has UN taken slow action? Why hasn't UN set up a tribunal? We want to see a tribunal that will make sure that Southern Sudan people are accountable. Those who committed crimes against the human beings. 20,000 Sudanese perished. They are perished. They are not accountable. Nobody can account for them. And we cannot sit here, go on hammering peace agreements without mechanisms of accountability. If we set a tribunal for Sierra Leone, for Rwanda, for Camera Rouge, we need somebody to stand up for the poor masses, the masses that have died, the masses that continue to die, the masses that are being brutalized, murdered, maimed on a daily basis by marauding armies of both Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. There must be an accountability. You are not going to sit here and tell people there is no accountability in Southern Sudan. There must be a tribunal. Why do we run to harass countries of Kenya, put ICC on Kenya, put ICC on this country, put ICC on Central African Republic? Why have we delayed on putting a tribunal for Southern Sudan to find out who is killing, who has been killing, how they have been killing people? Let me speak for the people in Southern Sudan, the women, the children who have not gone to school, the children who have no medicine, the children who have nothing, who have been running since 2013, and the war cannot end because of two people. Let them face the tribunal. I'm not going to keep quiet as a Pan-African to see Southern Sudan being maimed, being tortured, being cut, dismembered, and we keep quiet and watch people vote images of people, of malcontents singing to us in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in South Africa, telling us they have money. Let them face the international tribunal and tell the tribunal who gave them the guns, where they buying them, how they were killing people. Enough of is enough. Enough is enough for Africa. We have had enough. There is no need of that anymore. Enough is enough. And if people have died, they will not cry. We people who are left on planet Earth must cry for them. We must find justice for them. We must make sure that their leaders who go on bragging on television stations all over the world who are accountable. They must be behind bars.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Our ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, laid out a clear agenda for reform, but despite reported and repeated warnings, no action at all was taken. So the United States took the only responsible course. We withdrew from the Human Rights Council, and we will not return until real reform is enacted. For similar reasons, the United States will provide no support and recognition to the International Criminal Court. As far as America is concerned, the ICC has no jurisdiction, no legitimacy, and no authority. The ICC claims near universal jurisdiction over the citizens of every country, violating all principles of justice, fairness, and due process. We will never surrender America's sovereignty to an unelected, unaccountable global bureaucracy.
Trump's decision to come out of ICC, which is International Criminal Court, sends a lot of signals and a lot of happiness to some of us. From time of the inception of ICC, David Matanga and others, I want to thank David Hoyle, my professor, Professor Hoyle in London. Thank you very much for mentoring me to stand firm to discuss the African question on the ICC. It is very important, therefore, for the people of Africa to understand that while you rejoice, while you want to hate Trump, Trump has made it very clear that globalization is not part of his agenda.
America is governed by Americans. We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism. Around the world, responsible nations must defend against threats to sovereignty, not just from global governments, but also from other new forms of coercion and domination. In America, we believe strongly in energy security for ourselves and for our allies.
Today, as we speak, this nation cannot be the same. This nation is paralyzed. This nation needs serious redemption, needs the building of bridges. As a result of the ICC, the anger that was flowing from one end to the other created a problem that we see here, but people don't want to admit. People wait in Africa. Trump is correct. Let's wake up. Let's have a rebirth that delivers to hope so that our people don't perish in the Mediterranean Sea. A rebirth that will bring about peaceful resolution of conflicts, like the conflicts that occur in South Sudan between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. These conflicts don't give us any hope. These conflicts don't give us anything that is yearned for. These conflicts are a pity to Africa. We are lulled into the ICC in 1998 by Kofi Annan. America rejected ICC, stood firm and said, we can give you the money, but we shall not ratify for you because we have institutions. We have failed our own judiciary systems, but we want to be judged by another judiciary system which has no jury, it has no evidence, it has no separation of powers between the chief prosecutor and the investigative arm, and then with the prosecuting arm. That's the Africa we have.
have gathered here this morning to celebrate the life of our departed brother, Bob Collymore, whom the Lord has called to himself. Yet we believe that since Jesus Christ died and rose again, so it will be for those who die in Christ, for God will bring them to life with Jesus. Heavenly Father, in your Son Jesus Christ, you have given us a true faith and a sure hope. We pray this morning that you may strengthen this faith and this hope in us in all the days of our lives, that we may live as those who believe in the communion of saints and the forgiveness of sins and the resurrection to eternal life. Amen. Remain standing.
For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. Please remain standing for the reading of the psalm.
The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pasture. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness, love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Kindly take your seats. I now want to welcome three people. We'll stand with Mr. Joshua Oigara, the CEO of KCB, to read Bob's journey. Then he'll be followed by Mr. Michael Joseph, reading a poem and a tribute. Then after that, I will welcome my co-MC. In church, we don't MC services, but because of the friendship between Jeff and Bob, I allowed him to do this. You will allow him to make any mistake, he's allowed, because he's used to the bench. And now this is a church, I'll see how he'll perform. And so kindly, Joshua, Michael, follow each other, then we welcome Jeff.
And I will read the journey for Bob Collymore. I will paraphrase it. It is in the booklets on the page number 3 and number 4. Bob Collymore was brought up in Babris in Guyana. We call him as Bob. A lively and charming young boy. He often ran circles around his grandmother, who looked after him in his early years once his mother left to go to the United Kingdom to pursue work opportunities. Growing up amongst the fragrant flora of Guyana, Bob's deepest and earliest memory was a strict discipline his grandmother instilled in him. He watched as she invited other children, to share the food at home, often questioning why other children were eating family's food. Her answer, and indeed her philosophy, became his guiding principle to always ensure that everyone had a seat at the table, even if that means having half portions, so that there is enough for everyone. When the time came to join his mother in the United Kingdom, Bob left at the prospect of moving to a new country to explore the breadth of a new experience. He was initially unprepared for the reality of being one of the only black boys in his school, but quickly discovered that his quick wit, innate sense of mischief, and cheery humor gave him an edge. And someone who viewed the world through an inventive lens, Bob quickly discovered art as an outlet, and for most of his teenage years, he imagined an idyllic future where he could live off the creations. And when time came for university, he suffered his first significant setback. He was offered a place at the Warwick University, but had to turn it down because he was not eligible for funding. It was in that moment that he learned that he had to adapt if he wanted to create more opportunities for himself. While initially he thought this setback would mean that he could fully imagine a future of traveling and being an artist, that dream ended abruptly when his mother gave him an ultimatum at the age of 18. Get a job or find a new home. Not taking any chances, she secured an interview for him and made sure he showed up. And there begins Bob's accidental journey into the world of telecoms. He set up his first job as British Telecom, or BT as we know, and his first job was a tedious one, stacking shelves, but he did it so well that he had no choice. So BT had no choice but to shelve his efforts and give him a new job. Bob went on to join Cellnet and later Dixon, and he was responsible for many opportunities to grow and build a network. But in '98, Bob joined Vodafone, where he worked in progressively senior roles to enhance the company's strategic direction and build new solutions around the mobile phones. Bob then went on to his first global posting in Japan, and later on to South Africa as the Vodafone Governance Director for Africa, and later as the Chief of Corporate Affairs, which exposed him on how technology could transform the lives and leave an impact. But perhaps it was Bob's work in Kenya that catalyzed his belief that purpose was a key driver for business. And without a sustainable vision, companies will not be able to attract the right people and make any profits. And these 3 P's form the essential elements for any company, and were quickly adopted by Safaricom. In later years, Bob was acutely aware that he had started a race of life within set limits that he had no controls over. He spent the later years of his life trying to make sure other people never had the experience with the same limitations. By leveraging the power of partnerships, Bob motivated his peers to make a more active stand on building partnerships, building responsible businesses, and sustaining a global outlook and transform lives. And Bob really understood the business community was a key catalyst to fast-track inclusion, and the global goals, as we know them as Sustainable Development Goals, are the most effective lens that could enable businesses to see inequalities and business opportunities. Bob held significant global roles, both at the United Nations level, as an ambassador, as a leadership advisor, as a commissioner, and he was a member locally at the Vision 2030, a founding trustee of the National Road Web Safety Trust. He was a founder of the Kenya for Kenyans, and he was spearheading initiatives through the Diabetic Management Institute. He was decorated by His Excellency the President as a Moran of the Burning Spear for his efforts to support Kenyan society. And all through his career, Bob's affinity for the arts and music never left him. During his time in Safaricom, he founded the perfect medium, allowing him to explore how to create more opportunities. And he founded the Safaricom International Jazz in 2014 and would cherish the opportunity to host award-winning international acts alongside Kenyan jazz musicians to support the children of Ghetto Classics. And Ghetto Classic is a community-based program that aims to transform the lives of 4,000 children by using music, education to provide opportunities for themselves. So his unique outlook on life created the necessary ingredients for an extraordinary individual. And to the end, Bob was extraordinary. Bob passed away early Monday this week at his home in Nairobi from acute myeloid leukemia. Bob is survived by his extended family in Guyana, the United Kingdom, and here in Kenya. He leaves behind his wife Wamboi, 4 children, his mother, his sister, a niece, and a nephew. Fare thee well, my friend. Go well, Bob. Thank you.
About 1 year ago, Bob showed me this poem that he'd found in a book, and we agreed that whoever survived the other would read this poem at his funeral. I'm genuinely sad and heartbroken to be the one reading this poem today. It's called My Funeral. Forgive me for the words. I hope I can trust you, friends, not to use our relationship as an excuse for an unsolicited ego trip. I have seen enough of them at funerals, and they make me cross. At this one, though deceased, I am to be the boss. If you ask to talk about me for 5 minutes, please do not go on for 8. There is a strict timetable at the crematorium, and nobody wants to be late. If invited to read a poem, just read the bloody poem. If requested to sing a song, just sing it as suggested, and don't say anything. Though I will not be there, glancing pointedly at my watch and fixing the speaker with a malevolent stare, remember that this is how I always reacted when I felt that somebody's speech, sermon, or poetry reading was becoming too protracted. Yes, I was impatient and intolerant and not always polite. And if there aren't many people at my funeral, it will serve me right. I'm sure that's not what happened. As always, between Bob and I will ignore his instructions of just read the bloody poem and say a few more words. He will probably be upset, but he would do the same to me. Much has already been said about Bob, and much more will be said here today. I have, even with his encouragement, started writing my book about my life and Safaricom, and have so far written only one chapter. I called it chapter 33. And I called it Bob. One day you may read it. But what I would like to say here today in the presence of all of you is that Bob was the bravest man I ever met. He faced the indignities of months of injections, blood transfusions, chemotherapy, constant tests and examinations, pain, and in the end death, with an enormous sense of humor and resilience. I'm sure many of you knew that about him. He was so considerate and concerned about his family, his team, and even his doctors. He did not want anyone to worry about him. He wanted to worry about everybody else. Over the last 15 years, I went from being amused by this white man in a black body, pretending to be a very serious corporate person, to really becoming a serious corporate leader, to the only man whom I loved. And desperately want to live forever. Excuse me. But somehow God had other plans. Farewell, my friend, and God rest your soul. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Joseph. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go straight to the tributes. We're going to begin with Ashley Chepkorir. She's a student at the M-Pesa Foundation Academy. She will be followed by Charles Musandu, representing Safaricom staff, and thereafter Nick Reed, the CEO of the Vodafone Group. Ashley.
Members of the Kolimo family, Your Excellency the President, all protocols observed, good morning. My name is Ashley Chepkorir, a Form 4 student at M-Pesa Foundation Academy, and I stand here this morning representing the students and staff of the Academy, a project that was very dear to Bob's heart. I first met Bob in the streets of Nairobi outside the Kenya Conservatoire of Music in 2016. He was heading to his car and I walked up to him and said, "Hey sir, my name is Ashley Chepkorir from M-Pesa Foundation Academy. Could you please come to the academy on Monday because there will be a function to welcome the students in the campus and I will be the MC." Surprisingly, he didn't think twice. He enthusiastically said yes. I longed to meet him after the function because I had a lot of questions to ask him. I walked up to him and asked if he lives in a cave or something because I could not find him on any social media platform. He gave me his contacts and this is how we started our father-daughter relationship. In one of our first conversations, he said, "The joy of knowing children like you and all the wonderful children at the academy is immeasurable." On 18th June 2017, during Father's Day, I wrote to him and told him that when my friends were talking about their dads, the first person that came to my mind was him. In his reply, he said that that was the most heartfelt message he has ever received. He said we share the same father experience, and just like me, he refused to let the past define his future, and that he had chosen to live a richly fulfilling life. I noted something impressive in him. He didn't just love and care for the fraternity at the academy for his public image. He was genuine, generous, and humorous too. I remember we once organized a surprise visit during the sports day. He had a busy schedule and specifically said the visit will be very brief. The very and brief was in capital letters. He actually ended up staying for hours. All his emails ended with, "We now all need to focus on improving those grades as you promised." He wanted us to be successful, and on behalf of the students, his wish will be fulfilled. He has taught us a lot, and though he persistently told us that we inspired him, he inspired us more, and he will still inspire us every single morning. Through him, I learned a lot. He told me that a good business person uses their own product. That's when I started wearing my own jewelry and accessories and not just selling it to others at the academy. The M-Pesa Foundation Academy fraternity was saddened by the news, and there was a somber mood in the campus. We lit candles in the resource center and administration block to honor the good life that Bob lived. He was our mentor and greatly impacted our lives, especially the students. We will miss his surprise visits and inspiring speeches. I know that completely filling the empty space in our hearts is almost impossible, but we will try by being transformational leaders. He accepted that death is inevitable and still chose to be happy. This teaches me that every moment in life counts and that we should always maximize the present because we don't know what tomorrow holds. My last message to him is that you may not be here anymore, but my love for you will never die. I miss you, Dad. Your legacy lives on, and may your soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, Your Excellencies, admired business leaders, friends and colleagues, Mrs. Wambui Kolimo and family, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Charles Musandu, a member of staff at Safaricom. I'm here today to celebrate the life of our CEO, Bob Kolimo. It is not easy, but we have chosen to focus not on the loss, but on what we gained from interacting with him and knowing him. Bob was many things to many people. To me and countless others within Safaricom and beyond, he was a champion for equality, diversity, and inclusion. His commitment to using everything within his power to do good was not just something he spoke about. He championed it. And I, along with 129 other members of Safaricom staff living with disabilities, are a testament to this. We had the opportunity to interact with Bob a number of times, including a year ago during the Global Disability Summit in London, when he joined the Safaricom team and participated in a roundtable discussion on disability inclusion. During this session, he spoke with passion about the need for more organizations to embrace persons with disability. It wasn't just something he said because it supported the business public stance on embracing the Sustainable Development Goals, which he was also very passionate about. It was
Good morning, viewers, wherever you are in the world, in Africa, in the entire southern and northern hemisphere. Good morning. Good morning, viewers. As you have seen on our tape or on our television live from All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi, we just take an interruption of the sermon, of the service that is taking place, of my dear friend, my dear comrade, my dear Labour Party member of Croydon Central constituency, where he grew up as he came and stayed there together with the mom and the grandmother and the sisters. One of the children I can see right inside the cathedral. This is a person, I think, Ephraim, wherever you are, Ephraim and Efo, plus Jackie, you would remember the gentleman at Selhurst, one of the boys who was playing along with Ephraim, round down near Addington Palace. May his soul, my brother, go ye as the priests, as the situation is. We are all guests and we are visitors in this world. Today we come, if we wake up in the morning, it's because God has decided we wake up in the morning. Therefore, we thank God Almighty for having kept us to speak about issues that relate to our fellow people that we serve. We are born to serve. We are born to give direction. We are born. The life that Bob Kolimo has gone through is not very far from the life some of us have gone through. Some of us ended up in places where we met Bob Kolimo in Croydon as refugees fleeing persecution from the Ugandan government, and we have ended up being where we are today. The struggle to go to school in the United Kingdom is a long struggle, a very hard one. If you don't have the marks, the qualities, the qualifications to go there, you can. If you don't have the funding, believe me or not, Bob was not able to get that funding that is usually given to our white friends because they were born there. I believe Bob naturalized himself, having come from Guyana. You have to go through a process to naturalize yourself, to become a British citizen. Then you can have access to the funds that can take you to Warwick University, take you to London Guildhall University, take you to Canterbury University, take you to Ealing University, which is very, very clear, very difficult competition, because among millions and millions of white and British nationals, both in colors, in form, in religion, you have to struggle hard to be given a space, a place, and you have to find accommodation, you have to find funding. So funding at that time was not given to people who did not have naturalization certificates or who were not born in Britain. Viewers, that is the history some of us have gone through. I bumped into Bob again in those days. The members of Our Lady, the Lion pub down in Croydon on the way to Coulsdon will remember us. We remember most of the football men who could gather around to support our teams. I was a member of the Liverpool fan group. The entire club were divided in Arsenal and Manchester. Bob stuck to his team, and that is the team he has died supporting in his heart. And that team, if one can guess for me, I will give him nothing but airtime of 200 Kenya shillings on Kenya. But Bob did not show much, did not like much about football. Although he wanted to sponsor most of the football clubs, even our own pub, the Lady Lion pub, people wanted a football club. Later on, I moved on to create the Changarai Football Club and the Mugabe Football Club. I brought t-shirts from Zimbabwe as a member of the Labour Party. The most significant thing that you must remember, why Tony Blair is at that All Saints Club. The day Tony Blair came to campaign with us in Croydon Central in 1998, early 1998, when the campaigns were at the top. And Bob was one of those quiet. He never liked politics, but he was a quiet supporter, at times speaking very little. And with some of us still learning to resettle in the United Kingdom, we became members of the Labour Party. Labour Party people are more open, very not conservative. Some of us worked so hard in Croydon Central, which is the constituency which covers Coulsdon, and then the other part, there is Honourable Member of Parliament called Peeling, P-E-L-I-N-G, who took over the constituency later on. Viewers, that is the life of Bob. He never liked politics, and that is maybe some of us in this country, we did not go closer to discuss anything with Bob Collymore. He found people who wanted music. He preferred the people who wanted car racing, music, helicopter flights. And then also he had another side. He liked people from downtrodden people downtrodden in Madare, in Kibera. He was a man working for the people. He was a man who did not put money first. He was a man who could pay a bill when you are not aware that he has paid the bill, then he said, can we go now? It looks, we finished, can we go? Then he said, no, the bill is here. He said, I paid the bill a long time ago. I met him several times in Sankara. Bob, go well, my brother. You're a true African, true Pan-African, true global citizen. A citizen that make other people cry tears. A citizen that make people like us who have volunteered on a number of occasions. But because that is what God has said, that even the little that you have will be taken away. A citizen of a global community, a man who never at one time discriminate against where you come from. That's why you see a number of the people in All Saints Church are coming from different directions. Bob, go ye, my brother. I have seen the son, your son, in the church. I was not able to attend the church service because I was not in a position to. But wherever you are watching my, listening and looking at my eyes, brother, you did very well. Brother, you stood. Brother, you went. Brother, you showed what Africa can do. Brother, you did a great job in Kenya. You showed Kenyans how not to steal money from public utilities. You showed them. You left Safaricom a good organization. Today, as you go down, they are eyeing, they are already questioning, they are already asking questions. Who should take over? You showed them. Bob, you did a great job. You have showed them how to run institutions. But today, as you lie down there, as you lie before the Almighty for direction, you are vindicated. We look at the already social media critics starting to tell us who should take over. Kenyan should take over. Black man should take over. This should take over. That, please, in Africa, it shows, Bob, you wrote the poem. That's exactly what they do. That is exactly what Africans do. Before you are even rotten in the grave, they tell you they want this, they want your house, they want that, they want your money, they want your bank account. Africans, we are in trouble. That's why we can't stabilize. We are already eyeing up for Safaricom. Some are even saying it must be divided. Because they have been seeing there was no stealing capacity. Now the stealing capacity has arrived. They want to go there to steal. They say we want a Kenyan to run it. A Kenyan or no Kenyan is integrity. Integrity. The most important thing is integrity. Not Kenyan, not Ugandan. It's integrity. Are you able to run the Safaricom without stealing it? Are you able to run the Safaricom without doing what you have done in the pipeline company? Are you able to run it like a Bob Colimo? Already we are up. In fact, we might even start finishing each other because who should take over? And then destroy it. That's the danger of Africa. That's the thing that Bob did not want to see. That's why he has told them today in the poem, don't read too many speeches. Don't. Do what is supposed to be done. Integrity. Integrity. Chapter 6 is collapsed. People sit down and mushroom a plot. People sit down and say, if we write that there will be a plot to so and so, we shall gain mileage. That is what we are going through in these countries of ours in Africa. That's why Africa is at the center of difficulties. People sit down and say, we want a legacy to fail. This man is not working with us. Let's fail his legacy. That's what they are doing to Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. People laugh with you when they are plotting some other things. When you see the situation in Kenya, there is no vacancy of a president in the Republic of Kenya. But Kenyans are already advancing. They want, as if there is no president. They want it now. Now. So if such individuals can get a chance to remove the president in one way or the other, they can do it. Those are the implications of other campaigns that we are seeing in this country. The other campaigns are causing us a lot of misunderstanding, bringing a lot of apprehension, bringing a lot of state of apathy against the nature of the name of the president. That's the Kenya that we have. That's the Africa that we have. I wish the people seated in this cathedral today would emulate Bob Collymore. Mind your business. Mind your business. Yes, that's why Tony Blair has come all the way as a member of the Labour Party. Mr. Tony Blair, thank you very much for representing Croydon Central constituency. Thank you very much for doing so. You have represented Croydon Central constituency. Millions of people of Labour Party will be very happy to see you in Nairobi in All Saints Church. Although the mistakes that you made also on Zimbabwe are very many, Mr. Tony Blair, and then those of Iraq are very many. You erred, you lied about weapons of mass destruction. The Right Honorable Prime Minister, I have been a Labour member since 1987 in the United Kingdom. Therefore, I want to thank you for coming to see one of us, one of the cadres, one of those people coming from your constituency of the Labour Party majority. Some of us represented it in the committee, Central Committee of the Labour Party in Brighton in 1998, when you saw me stand up to put a hand to talk with my Ugandan English amongst the English teachers themselves about Zimbabwe. And the audience gave me quite a lot of applause. I thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Honorable Right Prime Minister, for coming down. For us in Punchline Africa, we want to emulate Bob Collymore. We want to tell it as it is. Bob Collymore never promises you a deal. He will not tell you, come and we cut a deal. He tells you, my friend, it will be done and you'll see it in the newspapers. Period. You want a tender in his Safaricom. You look, I knew this guy, but look at me. Not even a single day that I parked my car and drove it towards his office. If there were people who were like me, I would have driven to that office to bring about that I want to supply some equipment from United Kingdom, and you pay me so that I can go and buy another house near Clusdon or near Surrey down in Brighton or wherever at the beach. I want a beach house. I didn't do that because he told me, yes, now we have found each other here. Don't ever come for any business in my office. That is very good person. He tells you off. Other than people who tell you come for business, then the business ends up, you have brought him disrepute. Disrepute. You are disreputed yourselves and the organization and the name of Bob Collymore. Today, let's leave that apart. We are visitors. Let's live with integrity. Let's go with integrity. Ye go for integrity. Most African countries are collapsing because of integrity. The lack of integrity. Discipline. We don't have discipline. We eat it all. If you become a general manager, you eat it all. You eat even the desks. You eat the desks, then you eat the human beings themselves. Because if you are corruptly eating the money, you are eating the human beings, the desks won't be there. We are corrupt, and let's accept we are. Bob Collymore was not corrupt. Bob Collymore was a person who always weighed himself as a strong person, a believer of Jesus Christ, and he is gone. Quickly, on this, the Star newspaper of Kenya brings in a very serious perspective. Corps extorted 3 million shillings from recruits. This is another problem. That is what Bob never liked. Ruto death plot, Itumbi to be charged. He is in court as we speak. The battle is between his lawyers and his mouth, because you can see his mouth very open, and the lawyers are arguing his case as to whether he should be released today, because once you release him today, he will be on the social media to say again, I left when the matter was argument between the lawyers of Itumbi and the prostitution, whether they should grant the guy who is, yet they have other people they are looking for. And since he is able to be a hacker, he could hack all the evidence of the police. So there were so many reasons that were being said, which I don't want to go into. Itumbi's case, I gave advice to a child who never listened. So if you have been caught outside with your pants down, it is up to the courts to decide the fate. So the detective traced fake letter to Ruto's office. Aides put Ruto in political fix. That is true, because if this letter purportedly, which was written to go to the president, did not arrive to the president, then it was circulated in the media. The person who circulated the letter in the media, and then the DP went to report or tell the president anything, I think it is a political fix indeed. Because what will come out of this whole saga is not very good for me to discuss right now, but we wait and see the outcome as to whether the police will get their way through to have Mr. Itumbi detained for another number of days, like a Jaguar was detained, because Itumbi is not different from Jaguar. They are all public officers, and being a public officer, he has access to so many things. He has access to his guns, he has access to his bodyguards that he always rolls around, 3-4 of them. So he can do anything to any witness. So let the investigations be finished first, then maybe they can decide. It is up to the court to decide today. It is not my humble mouth that I would like to open the mouth like he opens every day, and it is wide like it is. So I would like to keep it off and move on to my second topic, which is 11 o'clock. It is now 2 minutes to 11 o'clock this morning. My opinion, yesterday the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta became real. We put up the President Uhuru Kenyatta timetable. We saw the judiciary, 98% said get the judiciary out. 96% corruption must be dealt with. People were worried about the date. People were worried, but President Uhuru Kenyatta himself admitted that yes, challenges are there. In his interview with Sharon Momanyi of the Standard newspaper and Standard KTN News, he admitted that challenges, these are the same challenges that have been staring Kenyans for a long time, that these challenges are structural and the obstacles are structural, that when you want to go through with any agenda in Kenya, it always brings you a big problem. Thank you very much. I'll use this opportunity now. Remember, upcoming next is a new program that is specifically run by none other than Miriam, and Miriam will be running that program after me every morning until further notice when we change what we want to do. But that is how we run this place, and that is how we shall run. Coming up next is the Diaspora Dispatches, news about Africa and international news, run by Miriam Ogutu, who is coming in next to fit my shoes to finish up the last leg in the next. You will begin at 10:20, which is 11:20 East African Standard Time, which is another, in Berlin is a different thing. But my topic of today, in my opinion, is Africa shifting to commercial theology. Is Africa shifting to commercial theology? If you look at most of the African countries, most of them in Africa, in our villages, commercial churches have mushroomed. If you go to church, if you look around across Africa, every Sunday, we have very good prayers. We go for prayers, we prayerful people. We all go out in big numbers. We wear our cotton, our wool, our linen. We try to wear the best hats to follow what the churches are. My take today of my opinion, and I would like us to listen to what I'm saying. In Africa, religion is oriented towards life. For the African, the manifest function of religion is to control the powers of life and vitality of pivotal. Vitality is pivotal. Pragmatic oriented function of religion is to make life possible and maintain it. That's true. Religion generally has often been used as a medium to maintain life. I want to take this opportunity to say this is the situation. The situation that I want to look at in Africa. The situation that I want to discuss about Africa. To discuss Africa in terms of what do we go and where do we go from here. Let me take this opportunity now to say something which can be put on the tape. Viewers or listeners to this tape from the Africa School of Thought. In Africa, religion is oriented towards everyday life. Before the coming of the white settlers, we in Africa had our way of praying. We went to different types of churches, different types of shrines. Churches came later, but we went to different types of shrines. Our prayers were in hope of no famine should come, rain should come, bad omen should leave villages, abomination should not come upon us as Africans. The coming in of the white missionaries changed our format of life. And since then, over 66 years since the first independent state in Africa, religion has been transformed from the religion that we knew, the healing of the heart, to a commercial basis of religion. Commercialization of theology in Africa, therefore, has created quite a lot of apprehension amongst the followers of different churches. In Kenya here, there are churches that believe that there is nothing wrong with people, whatever money they bring, how they bring it. Even thieves who have robbed a bank are able to come and deliver the money in the churches. Commercialization of theology is a doctrine that has come in Africa of late. It's a doctrine that is destroying the moral fabric of the same churchgoers who throng these churches every Sunday. In Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Uganda, we have pastors with empires. We have pastors with television stations, radio stations, drama schools, commercial entities, big malls. Has theology been commercialized in Africa? The answer is yes. We have pastors with apartments. We have pastors buying airplanes to fly, to carry passengers. Is this the theology that we had before? Is this the theology that Africa wants? The direction? We have pastors in South Africa predicting death of other African leaders. We have pastors in South Africa pretending to heal people, raise people from miracles. Commercialization. We have adverts flowing around. We have pastors who have turned their churches into places of commercial enterprise. Everywhere in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, in South Africa, in West Africa, in Uganda, in Kenya here, in all places, in Congo, we have people in Malawi. We have people talking about miracles. We have pastors who even put people in caskets and tell them to wake up and walk when they can't walk. The commercialization of theology, therefore, in Africa leaves us at crossroads. Do we ask ourselves, why did we leave our original way of praying for the rain, for the good harvest, for no famine, no bad omen coming to the clans, no animals dying, no plague coming? That's the way we used to pray before the white missionaries arrived in East Africa and Africa at large. Are we at crossroads? Is theology in Africa becoming commercialized? The answer is yes. The authorities in these countries can look for solutions that many millions and millions of people are being ripped off their assets, their money, and so many other things under the pretext of commercial theology. Thank you, fellow Africans. God bless. Viewers, that brings us to the end of that brings us to the end of our show. And I've done my best. But the news coming from Milimani Court said the magistrate, Milimani senior resident magistrate Abdul Zainab to deliver a ruling on whether the digital strategist Dennis Tumbi will be released on bail at 3 p.m. So we wait for 3 p.m., which is about 3 hours from now, for the magistrate to decide whether this guy, who already has a lot of supporters drumming up support for him on social media, and others calling others, very many people names, will be released at 3 p.m. We leave it to the courts to make a decision. May God guide us. Coming in next is a small clip from African School of Thought, whatever the audience has decided to ask the production team. Play it for the people as you usher in Miriam Ogutu, who is our anchor here, and she's going to talk about the seriousness of Africa in terms of, especially in Khartoum and Ethiopia, where we see almost tribal conflicts, a conflict erupting anytime now, and several other African countries. On behalf of Punchline Africa UK Limited, and on Punchline Think Tank and all Pan-African think tanks of mine, I just want to wish you good luck, that tomorrow we shall be here, and on Sunday on Africa Showdown we shall have the Deputy President of Amazonia, who will be live with us, and we shall be discussing several issues regarding the question of Amazonia. Remember, on Sunday also, there will be the heads of state summit in Niger, Niamey. We shall cross over there to hear what the presidents of Africa will be doing and will be saying. And to remember, tomorrow, President Uhuru Kenyatta will be leaving for Tanzania, as was said, to visit, for a private visit to President Magufuli in his rural home. Is Africa uniting to solve the problems of East Africa? We shall watch those events, and Miriam will bring us up to date over these events. Thank you very much. Cheerio, cheerio, cheerio.
I'm not going to go through any more surgeries. I'm not going to do any more chemo. My time has come. And it's only cowards who postpone destiny. I read some of his son-in-law's words, and they resonate. He told me, we are all going to die. Nobody will remember me for dying. But I want to do something with the rest of my life that people will remember me with. And we know with his family, he did many things in the time that was left. I decided to mention that because I'm sure a lot of know Wambui as Wambui Kamiro, and very few of you know who Kamiro was. He succumbed in the year 2007, and in one of our last conversations, he told me, Kongo, I'm going, and I want you to look after my young family. Anytime they need you to study with them, please be there. And I promised to do that, and that's why I'm studying here today. So, same reason, when Bob Kellymore came calling, looking for a boy's hand in marriage, it's me he encountered. He didn't have a choice. And as you've heard, Collymore was an articulate man. An execution. And this occasion was no exception. He put up a team which he thought were the best negotiators in town. And he was not mistaken. That team was led by none other by the then Attorney General, Professor Githu Muigai. A professor and an Attorney General, no less. And they came to our home. Of course, Githu Muigai, because of the connotations of our name, Kongo Muigai, Githu Muigai, tried to intimidate me to call him father. I agreed, but that didn't help him. He tried to pull rank as the Attorney General. That didn't wash. And they realized they have come up against us. Votes on a Saturday afternoon. So we had a nice afternoon. Bob, of course, was very worried. He had no idea what was going on. But the beauty about it is he kept on telling Professor, whatever they want, just do it. Fortunately, I could understand. But eventually, with us, that is just the banter. Otherwise, we have the limits, we have what's laid down. You can't ask for more than what's allowed. But of course,
our ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, laid out a clear agenda for reform, but despite reported and repeated warnings, no action at all.
To this smile of his, he smiled for a whole straight hour. He was over the moon. And I must say, between me and Mama Wambui, from that day, we have never regretted giving our beautiful daughter to Bob. He looked after her, he adored her, he loved her, he protected her. We were so happy. And that love overflowed to the rest of the family. And Bob was a great, great family man. Some of you will describe Bob in his corporate role, the captain of the captains. But once Bob drove into his compound, you would not recognize him. He becomes this playful, jocular, happy man, joking with his wife. He would go on his force to give the children a giddy up. And those corporate fellows, if you found Bob in his house, you wouldn't recognize him. We have always been grateful for him. And as we traveled this journey with our boy, we really felt for her. So today we remember him as a great man. And his character, he will pass it on for generations. And that's what he meant when he said, we are all going to die. What will be remembered is what you do, not that you died. So Abui, my girl, you've been widowed young. And I'm sure you're going to seek answers to that. Seek them in the Lord. Don't seek them elsewhere. God says he's the husband of the widows, and he comes to visit them. Every time he visits you, ask him your questions. In the fullness of time, he will give you answers. And now before I finish, I want to read a very, very short tribute from Bob's mother-in-law, Professor Wamai. And she says, as a scientist immersed in research and academia, and before our boy introduced Bob Collymore to me, I had never met Bob besides seeing him in the media. Likewise, I cared very little about the better option. as I depended on different telecom companies that served me well. Wabui respectively introduced Bob to me at our home during their early days of dating. Nice meeting you, Bob Korimo. I hope you are serious about my relationship, about your relationship with my daughter. If you are not, and you are just wasting her time, I'll deal with you single-handedly with my fair little hands. But in little respect, this was very harsh, but Bob just looked at me and smiled. Throughout his loving and wonderful relationship with Wambui, Bob never gave me any single reason to use my fair hands, and it is now my turn to smile back at Bob. I say to Bob's mother and sister, thank you for giving Bob to my family, to Kenya, and to the world. Bob and I shared a very special mother-son-in-law relationship, and I will highlight just one example among many. During one lunch date, he surprised me by hinting that he was frustrated with having to pop many pills for a long time to tame the leukemia. That lunch conversation was the beginning of our death can wait inspirational phrase. Bob's death waited since November 2017. Of course, death will eventually and surely take us. But we all can celebrate the life of Bob Korimo by using our will to defy death, even as we surprise the doctors, just like Bob Korimo did. As your death awaits, will you be making the world a better or a worse place? Will you be building or destroying the world? Let us to make this world a better and happier place. Rest in peace, my dear son, Bob. And to Bob, we say fare thee well, travel well. May God give you peace. He gave you to us, and he has seen it fit to take you unto himself. May his great name be praised, and the congregation will say, Amen. Thank you.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya,
A very good afternoon to you from here in Nairobi, just 23 minutes past noon here in Nairobi. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and Dr. Matanga was with you here in the first hour of the show, where he was just taking you through, first of all, the eulogy of Bob Korimo. If you don't know who Bob Korimo is, he was the CEO of one of the most profitable companies in East Africa, and that is the telecom company Safaricom, the leading telecommunications company here in Kenya. And so he passed on early Monday morning, and he was cremated on Tuesday, and today they were having mass for him at All Saints Cathedral here in Nairobi. So thank you so much. And as we were watching before I came in, it was just part of a eulogy by the wife's uncle, I think. He was eulogizing there on his relationship with the late Bob Korimo. And so we still, it was a shocker for the whole country and for the people who knew this person, because of how much even the innovation that was brought into this company while he was at the helm, and the CEO of Safaricom, that changed lives and revolutionized how actually you can just use a SIM card, not just for calling, but also for money transfer and other things. And so all of that came during his realm at the top of the company of Safaricom. But But right now, I just want us to go straight and just bring you up to date with what is making headlines across Africa, and then we'll just look at it shortly, and that will be the order of the show. And we start with Libya, where the United Nations Security Council has failed to condemn an attack on detention center for migrants in Libya because the United States did not endorse a proposed statement. At least 44 people died in what the U.S. State Department earlier described as an abhorrent attack. During a 2-hour closed-door meeting of the Security Council, Britain circulated a statement that condemned the airstrike and called on the warring sides to commit to a ceasefire. But the U.S. diplomats told the meeting they required a green light from Washington to approve the text of the statement, and the talks ended without an agreement. And in Sudan, direct talks between military rulers and protest leaders have assumed in Sudan, with some progress being made on the release of political prisoners, a mediator has said. The negotiations had stalled since May due to disagreement over the composition of the top body that will lead the country during a transition period. The African Union and Ethiopian mediators hope the two sides will agree on how to share positions on the Sovereign Council. The opposition groups also want the deadly raid on their sit-in last month investigated. The resumption of dialogue restores hope for a transition to a civilian rule. And we move to Uganda, where a court in Uganda has ordered the government to pay up to $6,700 as compensation to Joyce Mikahaga Namata, the mother of a man who was killed in police custody in 2007. Ronald Kiakanga died as a result of the severe beating and torture he received at Nabingo police post after he was picked up at a film hall and dragged into a police cell where he was found dead the following morning, the court judgment said. Justice Musa Sekana said that the police force was viciously liable, adding that police officers deliberately and illegally tortured the deceased, which is unconstitutional. We go to Gambia, where a former member of the military junta that brought Yahya Jammeh to power in the Gambia July 1994 has been charged with murder. Yankuba Toure had refused to testify before the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission, which is investigating human rights violations alleged to have been committed during Mr. Jammeh's 20-year rule. The former president was forced from office in January 2017 after regional powers sent in troops when he refused to give up power. And we go to Cameroon, where authorities in Switzerland have handed suspended sentences to at least 5 members of Cameroon President Paul Biya's security team after they were arrested on Tuesday in Geneva for an alleged assault on a journalist. A Swiss newspaper, Tribune Geneva, reports that 5 men appeared in court on Wednesday, and a 6th member of the team, a woman, had been released as she held a diplomatic passport. A statement by the regional government said a criminal complaint had been filed by journalists working for Radio Television Suisse, who alleged that he had been assaulted in front of a hotel while covering a demonstration by opponents of the Cameroonian president last week. And we go to South Sudan, where the Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly has warned members of parliament against speaking to the media without his permission. It is not clear what prompted Honorable Speaker Anthony Lino Makana to issue the warning. However, some lawmakers have been vocal lately, airing their views on topical issues, including budgetary discussions. And we go to Nigeria still, where the continent's biggest economy, Nigeria, announced yesterday that it will sign the Africa Free Trade Agreement at the coming Africa Union Summit. Nigeria was one of the last companies that had not committed to signing the deal, and its decision to join the bloc will significantly bolster its clout. The African Continent Free Trade Agreement, AFCFTA, aims to eliminate tariffs between member states, creating a market of 1.2 billion people with a combined GDP of more than $2.2 trillion US. And we move to DRC, where the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi has dismissed a proposal by opposition leader Martin Fayulu to set up a team to review the country's constitutional paveway for a new election. Mr. Tshisekedi was elected in December 2018 in a poll which Mr. Fayulu condemned as rigged. His argument that false result had been announced was rejected by a constitutional court. On Tuesday, a document signed by Mr. Fayulu proposing that he heads a constitutional review team to resolve what he sees as a political standoff was widely circulated online. And we go to Rwanda and Uganda, and the civil society organizations in Uganda have filed a case against the government of Uganda and Rwanda over border restrictions between the two countries. The case against the two governments has been lodged at the East African Court of Justice, arguing that the effective border closure contravenes the treaty established in the East African Community and the Regional Community Market Protocol. The complaints want the court to rule against what they call the arbitrary border closure, and that those affected are adequately compensated. And in Rwanda, a Rwandan man has been sentenced to 8 years in prison in the United States for immigration fraud and perjury after hiding the fact that he was involved in the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. Jean Leonard Teganya, 47 years old, was convicted and sentenced for the most serious form of immigration fraud, lying about his status as a war criminal to win asylum in the United States. U.S. Attorney General Andrew Ellering said in a statement that he was issued by the Department of Justice. Kenaya was a medical student in Rwanda at the time of the genocide and was accused of leading teams of soldiers around hospital and identifying Tutsi patients, the U.S. statement added. And in Zimbabwe, a protest group in Zimbabwe has called for a 5-day nationwide stay away from Monday to protest against the worsening economic crisis in the country following the government's decision to outlaw the use of foreign currencies. The Tajamuka Siejikele campaign group said it was condemning the resignation. It was demanding the resignation of President Emerson Mnangagwa, and the 5-day protest will be peaceful. Remember, the protest began on Monday. And still in Zimbabwe, and a lawyer has filed a court to challenge the government's decision to ban the use of international currencies in the country. Godfrey Mupanga says that the government's monetary policy is unreasonable, illegal, and unconstitutional. He argues that the finance minister does not have the power to amend the law. Last week, authorities reintroduced a Zimbabwe dollar 10 years after an economic crisis forced it to switch to using foreign currencies. And we swiftly move to Algeria, where the interim president of Algeria, Abdelkader Ben Salah, has made a state television address repeating his call for elections and national dialogue to end the political crisis in the country. Mr. Ben Salah said it was the only democratic solution and that the army would not be part of the talks. His previous appeals for dialogue had been rejected by protesters who want to overhaul the entire political system. A presidential election was scheduled for this month, but had to be postponed for lack of candidates. The mass protests are fueled by the resignation 3 months ago of the veteran president Abdel Bouteflika have been continuing in the capital Algiers. And in Mauritania, a constitutional council has confirmed Mohamed Ould Ghazouani as the country's president-elect. The country announced on Monday that Ould Ghazouani had been elected to a 5-year term and he will be inaugurated on August 1st. Ould Ghazouani, 62 years old, a retired general who served as a defense minister before being picked as the chosen successor of Mauritania's outgoing president, won the June 22nd election with 52% of the vote, according to the country's electoral commission. And in Malawi, a top aide of Malawian President Peter Mutharika has been banned from entering the United States due to involvement in significant corruption, the U.S. Embassy in the capital, Lilongwe, has said. Uladi Musa had engaged in and benefited from public corruption when he served as a Minister of Home Affairs, the statement added. This means that Mr. Musa had breached the standards set by the U.S. State Department. And we end with South Africa, where South Africa's third largest political party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, is to withdraw its support from opposition-run coalition governments in hung municipalities, a potential causing the collapse. EFF leader Julius Malema said his party would no longer vote with the official opposition Democratic Alliance in all municipalities where its support was required. The radical EFF increased its support in recent elections and emerged as a kingmaker in many municipalities, but it does not have outright control of any of them, and it had wanted the DA to back it in some of those places in return for its support in hung municipalities. So that is the latest this afternoon from Africa. Thank you so much for watching. I see a lot of you have been writing here since Dr. Matsanga was here the first hour. Bol Nyang, you said you're watching from Australia, and Eze Tobias, thank you so much. Michael Grons, you're saying good morning. You're watching from Germany. It's actually good afternoon here. So thank you so much for watching. So that is just some of the news making headlines across Africa this morning. And of course, I ended with the matter of South Africa. And of course, the country is getting ready to go and have the municipality elections. Here we'll call it the council elections or the MC elections. And so EFF, that is the Economic Freedom Fighters, that is led by the fiery firebrand, Julius Malema. After the last elections, they actually gained a lot of they were the big gainers in the last elections. And so they had a pact with the official opposition party in South Africa, that is the Democratic Alliance, that there are areas where if they were to, go and front candidates, then they would front one candidate in regards to if the party was popular in that place, then the EFF could not front the candidates where the DA was popular, or if it's an area where the EFF was popular, then they will let the EFF candidate to just vie for that, and the DA will not file for a candidate in that area. But the EFF, led by Julius Malema, has come out and said he doesn't think that will work for his party, and so now he is trying to say that the EFF, that is the Economic Freedom Fighters, will go by itself during the next coming, municipality elections, and he's not willing to work together with the official South Africa's opposition party, that is the Democratic Alliance. And the political intrigues continue there in South Africa. And also in Malawi, top aide of President Peter Mutharika has been banned from entering the United States over his involvement in significant corruption. Remember, there's still a turmoil continuing right now in Malawi as we speak, after the elections that happened last month that were highly disputed, and the opposition has come out to say they do not accept that win by Peter Mutharika, and they've been challenging it, and we've been seeing protests. In fact, a week ago, it was thought that they stormed into the official residence of the president, and we see videos making rounds online. We were just wondering what is really happening in Malawi, but it has not been very peaceful over there, and there's been protests in the capital, in Lilongwe, and other towns across the country protesting against the win of President Peter Mutharika, who was, it was very controversial, the manner in which even the elections happened, because Malawi has about 24 provinces, and so in 10 out of those, the opposition went to court to challenge the elections, to challenge the results. They were saying these results were doctored or manipulated and was not reflecting the will of the people. So the opposition went to court to challenge that, and the court said, you know what, out of the 24, 10 of those provinces that they mentioned actually were sort of, the court agreed that there was a case, there was something to be looked into, and so the court ordered that there should be a recount in those areas. And that, I think the court order was given on a Saturday, and on a Monday early in the morning, the High Court had already suspended the initial order and said, you know what, the whole election was done very free and fair and credible, and President Peter Mutharika was elected. And just a few hours after that, President Peter Mutharika was, inaugurated. It was done all in a very hasty manner. And so this, if you understand how that happened, then you will see where the opposition in Malawi is coming from. And so since then, it has been running battles in the streets of Lilongwe and other towns across Malawi. They are protesting the elections of Peter Mutharika. They're saying he was not duly elected. And just a week after the inauguration, I think the U.S. ambassador to Malawi had gone to, I think, opposition's headquarters and was trying to mediate peace. It's not very clear what he had gone to do there. But the police disrupted that meeting, and people were, tear gas was fired, and the U.S. ambassador to Malawi was quickly, driven away. And so now you see that the U.S. has come out to, give a travel ban to one of the very close and a very important ally of President Peter Mutharika, that is Uladi Musa, together with his wife. They has been banned, and they will not be traveling to the U.S. So let's just see how that Malawi situation is playing out. And something else also, just in regards to the protesting of elections. Oh yes, here in Zimbabwe. And of course, a protest group in Zimbabwe has called for a nationwide strike because of what is happening right now. They're very tough times, and they're calling for President Mnangagwa now to resign. And they're led by they're called the Tajamuka Sesijikile campaign group. So basically, what happened? Zimbabwe banned the use of all foreign currencies in the country. They're trying to revive their own currency, which has been was obliterated years ago because of hyperinflation. It lost its value, and so businesses in Zimbabwe and other normal people, especially the US dollar, was one of the main, mode of exchange there in Zimbabwe. And of course, the South African rand, and some monies across the different neighboring countries were in use in Zimbabwe. And so the government, out of nowhere, they had announced earlier that they had a plan to do that, but it was supposed to be just a gradual process, as they make everything in place and put a structure in manner in which this was going to take place. But out of nowhere, the government came out 2 weeks ago and announced and said, from tomorrow, we are stopping the use of any foreign currency in this country, and we are going to use the RTGS, that is the interim dollars. They work on the modalities of a permanent currency in the country. And so some lawyer went to court and to challenge that move, and they're saying the monetary policy, because that is the Minister of Finance is the one who came out to give this order. And so these people have gone to court to challenge this, and they're saying the monetary policy is unreasonable, is illegal, and unconstitutional, arguing that the Finance Minister has no power to amend the law, because amending the law, that is left to the Parliament. And so by this move by the Finance Minister of Zimbabwe, it is perceived from their standpoint as though he was trying to bring in a new bill that is not constitutional, in the manner in which it has not passed through Parliament and it has not been approved. For him to come out and give such directives, it requires a special bill from Parliament, or something that has been passed as an amendment of the law in Parliament, which did not happen. And so last week, authorities reintroduced the Zimbabwean dollar. Sorry, it was not 2 weeks ago, it was last week. 10 years after an economic crisis forced it to switch to the use of foreign currency. So that case right now is in the courts, and the new money is in circulation. So I don't know how that will happen. Remember when Kenya, we were having our new currency introduced, and it came so fast. We were told that it will take 3 months for it to really be there. But a week later, or a few days later, the new money was in circulation, and some people tried going to court to block it, but it was, I think, too late, because now we are using the new currencies that was introduced a month ago here in Kenya. And so there we are. So that Zimbabwean situation. Let's just, I'll keep you up to date and tell you what's really happening there in Zimbabwe. And now we move to Rwanda, where a man, his name is Lona Tanganya, and he's been living in the U.S. for quite some time now, since the 1994 genocide, and he went there under asylum and so right now he was found to be culpable of some of the killings that happened in Rwanda during the Rwandan genocide in 1994, and he lied about his status. And according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, he said he was convicted and sentenced for the most serious form of immigration fraud, that is lying about his status as a a war criminal, but he won an asylum in the United States. So he was actually a war criminal in Rwanda, but when he went to seek for asylum there, he went as a victim of the war, the genocide that was happening, and so he went as a to seek for a political asylum, and only for now the court to realize that is actually he perpetuated some of the things that happened during the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, and so he has been jailed for 8 years in prison. That is quite lenient. So he was jailed for lying, but not for killing, I guess. Well, after the reconciliation and the courts that happened years later in Rwanda, I think perhaps they've moved on from that, and he will not be convicted. But he was convicted of lying, and how he was able to get his status there. He lied, and he violated immigration laws there in the United States. And also now a situation that has been simmering. Yes, in the DRC, actually, just before we go, it's still in the DRC. Remember, there has been a war, a civil sort of a war between two communities, the Lendu and the Hima, I believe. One of them is pastoralists, the other one are farmers, and they have been at loggerheads, and there have been serious, killings happening there that has revived some undertones of a civil war that has ravaged that country's years back, and now it seems as though it's creeping back very, very slowly, and analysts and people across the world, I think, should be worried about what is happening right now in the DR Congo. And from statistics from the United Nations, I think Uganda right now has in excess of 8,000 new refugees from the DRC that are running away from this new war between people have been killed and people have been killed. I don't have the exact number, but it's really worrying what is happening at the DRC right now, and so. President Felix Tshisekedi has dismissed a proposal by opposition leader Martin Fayulu to set up a team to review the country's constitution to pave way for a new election. So remember, the elections happened last year in December, 30th of December last year, towards the end of the year, and Felix Tshisekedi won in a move that was not really expected, because people had thought, there's one candidate that former President Joseph Kabila had favored that was set to win, or people thought would win, or the statistics, out of manipulation or what normally, in Africa, the incumbent really never loses. But in a very surprise move, the Electoral Commission, that is Cheni, in the DRC announced President Felix Tshisekedi as the winner of the elections, and this attracted a lot of condemnation because it is believed, observers came out to say, the elections was marred with a lot of electoral irregularities. It was not free and fair. In fact, France was the country that came out first to castigate the whole process and to just pour water on it and said, no, this did not happen. And even the Catholic Church, which is considered to be a very strong voice when it comes to matters in the DRC, came out to say, from our own observers, we think Martin Fayulu won the elections. And so it has been a back and forth between the president's camp and also the opposition. And remember, a few opposition figures that had fled the DRC during the times of Joseph Kabila have now returned to the DRC, setting a stage for very interesting political times in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But now, Fayulu has refused to relent, and now he is proposing that the country should form like a team to review the country's constitution and to pave way for a new election. So they're just coming for an election that happened, in December 30th last year, an election that was supposed to have happened in 2016, but for some very weird reasons, President Joseph Kabila kept pushing it. 2 years later, it happened last year. But now Martin Fayulu wants the country to actually go back for another election because he believes that Mr. Tshisekedi, who was elected in 2018 poll, was rigged, and so he's still not very comfortable with that. And so he's saying his argument that he is faulting, of course, the results that were announced by the Constitutional Court, because that he had to take the matter to the Constitutional Court, and of course the Constitutional Court ruled in favor of now President Felix Tshisekedi. And on Tuesday, a document signed by Mr. Fayulu proposing that he heads. Now listen. He's saying that there should be a team set up to review the country's constitution to pay for a new election. And not only that, Mr. Fayulu is now saying that he is the person that is supposed to be heading this team, this constitutional review team, and he wants to be the one to head this constitutional review team. You know what? I don't think President Tshisekedi is going to agree with that, and he believes this team will help to resolve what he sees as a political standoff that was widely circulated online. Now, look. He is part of the standoff. Matter of fact, he is the reason why there's a standoff, because he does not agree with the elections that happened last year in December, which, of course, the result he protested, went to court, and the Constitutional Court, said, you know what, President Tshisekedi has won the elections, and he's been protesting. So now he's suggesting they form a review team, a constitutional review team, to review the constitution that will pave way for another election. And he wants to be the one to head that team to solve this stalemate, but he's part of also the stalemate. What kind of maths is that? I don't think that will work, even in any democratic nation in the world. What they need to do is perhaps get a neutral body or a neutral person who has no interest in any of those sides, and maybe that would make more sense. But him suggesting this and then also his intention is to pay for another new election, and he wants to be the one to head this team. I think that is just does not make quite sense. So there has been that letter and that document that is signed by the opposition leader in the DRC has been making headlines across social media. Yes, so that is, but I don't think President Tshisekedi will really agree to this at all. And if they should form a constitutional team to pave way for whatever it is, then I think they should look for a neutral person. Just my personal opinion, because at this point, Mr. Fayulu is part of that. He's part of the stalemate that should be resolved. So he cannot purport to want to head that review team that will bring a solution to what is happening. It's already on a bias, so that will not be a very equal playing field for anybody, and so that will not, I don't think the president will be accepting of that. And we move to Rwanda, Uganda. And if you're familiar, there has been a standoff in a particular border between Uganda and Rwanda due to some problems these two countries, or some misunderstandings these two countries have been having. And right now, a civil society organization in Uganda has filed a case against the government of Uganda and Rwanda over border restrictions between the two countries now. The case against the two governments has been lodged at the East Africa Court of Justice, and it is arguing that the effective border closure contravenes the treaty establishing the East African Community. And I would imagine in this treaty, there's supposed to be free movement, not much restriction. As long as you have the proper documentation and your reasons are valid, you're free to move to any East African country. It has made it very easy if you want to move from one East African country to the next. There's not too much formalities. But this civil society organization in Uganda is arguing by this tension and that has been created by these two countries, it has now made the movement very difficult, and so they're contravening some of the laws that established the East African Community. So this is very, very interesting. And of course, they lodged this case at the East African Court of Justice. Now, this is going to be very interesting, because who is the chair of the East African Community right now? It's Rwanda. How will that play out? I don't know. But let's just wait. This will be very nice to just see and wait how this will play out. And so the case has been lodged by the civil society in Uganda, and they've put a case at the East African Court of Justice saying the fact that the border between Rwanda and Uganda has been closed is actually affecting a lot of citizens and free movement, and contravenes the spirit of the East African Community. And you know what? I think they have a point. So let's just see how that case will go there. And we move where? We move to Algeria, and the protests in Algeria is still continuing. And now the interim president, I watched him yesterday, he came out and he said, his name is Abdikadir bin Salah. There was another one who resigned. I think he resigned on Monday, and he was from the lower parliament. I think he was a speaker there, and he was the interim president. He resigned because he could not take the pressure. Algerians, but I sort of like the style of Algerians protesters. So far, it's been very peaceful, and they're not sitting in the streets every day. I think it's on Fridays alone, and the rest of the times they going about their business. So their normal lives have not exactly been disrupted, and they're able to do this very systematically. There's no chaos, but they come out in huge numbers. And also the side of the military, the interim government has been very responsive. All the demands the protesters have been making, majority of them they've been able to meet, resign. They've made sure some of these people, especially the people who served under former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, have been arrested. They're very corrupt, and we've seen so many people being arrested and so many people resigning. And so elections, remember, were supposed to happen actually today. Yesterday, today. 4th, yeah, it was supposed to happen today, but since there was no candidate that registered, the two that came out the last minute or not really did not meet the specifications of the electoral commission there in Algeria for you to run for presidential elections there. So no presidential election, candidate really. So it was postponed due to lack of presidential elections. But they've been going out there and continuing with their protest every Friday. And now the interim president Abdikadir bin Salah has come out and say, with the need to have election and national dialogue to end the political crisis there in that country. So I mean, it's overdue. I think that perhaps it's time the protesters just a little bit and came to a level, because you've seen that the military side, they actually been very responsive to their needs and to the demands. So I think perhaps it's time for a national dialogue in Algeria, because for how long are they going to be in the streets? So let them bring out a candidate, suggest a candidate, and let them just have a way that they can agreeing for the country to move forward and hold the elections so that the political crisis can end in the country. So I hope that they listen to the call of the interim president Ben Salah and see that the political impasse has been able to to be solved in that country. I think the longer it stays, it becomes something else. But so far, I'm glad that it has been very peaceful, and they go about their lives the rest of the days that they're not protesting in the streets, and so the economy has not been very affected. Of course, there has been some effect, but not too much, and they're able to go about their lives as usual with no much interruption, unlike what happened in Sudan. And talking about Sudan, let me just look for that right now and fill you in with what is happening there right now. And of course, in Sudan, direct talks between military rulers and protest leaders are resumed yesterday, and with some progress being made on the release of political prisoners, a mediator has said. So remember, one of the demands the protesters were making in Sudan, they wanted the opposition leaders that the military junta and his team had arrested and detained to be released. So there seems to be another release there. I remember on Sunday there was a protest that happened in the streets of Khartoum and across Sudan that the Transitional Military Council had banned and asked not to happen, but the protesters went ahead and had it anyway, and it was reported that 44 people were actually killed during that protest, and a number of them were injured. And so right now nobody is winning. The protesters are not winning, the army is not winning, and Sudan as a country is not winning. So I think also now negotiations have resumed, so that is a good thing, and with some progress being made on the release of political prisoners, which I also think is an absolutely good thing. So let's just see how that will work out. Since the raiding or the ambush by the military against the protesters on the 3rd of July, the mediation process has stopped since then. There have not been any talks between the protest and the military council, and so they resumed yesterday. So that is a very good thing, and so let's just be hopeful that the progress that is being seen to be made will actually amount to something at the end of this, and they can agree on, how the transition process. Remember, they already agreed on a 3-year transition process, but with the resumption of the talks, probably they will arrive to that very, very quickly, and the dialogue is hoped to restore the hope of a transition to a civilian rule. So that is just the latest in Sudan this afternoon. And we go to where now? To Libya also. It has been a melting point. No, I said how many people died? No, in Sudan, I think about 14 people died, on Sunday. 44 died in Libya. Remember, there was an attack by a place where, immigrants have been hiding in Libya. And so the United Nations Security Council has failed to condemn an attack on a detention center for migrants in Libya because the United States did not endorse a proposed statement. At least 44 people died in what the U.S. State Department earlier described as an abhorrent attack. Now, this happened, I think, on Tuesday. 44 people died, and they died out of the missile. They were attacked by Khalifa Haftar's, forces, and so 44. Majority of them were migrants who were trying to find their way. Because, Libya has been a gateway for a lot of people who wants to get to Europe. And so they were caught up in this mayhem. And so they were taken to a detention center in Tripoli. And that place was bombed, I think, on Monday. And 44 people have now lost their lives. I was just watching the news, and it's very sad. And a lot of them are still receiving treatment. But what is very interesting is now this Libyan matter, you see the international, a country like the United States has not come out to condemn, even United Nations, whose government they recognize in Libya, the GNA, the Government of National Accord, that is being attacked. They have not come out to give even a statement to even condemn this attack that left 44 people dead. And this is why, during a 2-hour closed-door meeting of the Security Council, Britain circulated a statement that condemned the airstrike and called on the warring sides to commit to a ceasefire. But the U.S. diplomats told the meeting they required a green light from Washington to approve the text of the statement, and the talks ended without an agreement. So the U.S., who's normally very vocal to come out and condemn such attacks, they're very quick to come out and tweet, have not even come out to condemn this attack that left 44 people dead in Libya and others nursing serious injuries. And of course, France is radio silent. We know now it's very apparent that they are the ones, France, Egypt, UAE, which I think 2 days ago came out to distance itself from the countries that are supporting the renegade Khalifa Haftar, but they are part of it, and also Saudi Arabia, and they are actually the ones aiding the general. And Libya has just become a place for political, I don't know what. It's difficult. And now the people in Libya are caught in the middle. And if you are expecting any help from the AU, perhaps they're expecting any help from the African Union, I don't think that will happen, being that Egypt is involved in that. And the Egyptian president is the one that is chairing AU right now. So that is something that I don't think will happen. So Libya is another catastrophe in Africa continuing to happen. I think people are now even desensitized. 44 people dead, it's just another news from Libya. It's just another death toll from Libya. So the world is becoming very desensitized in the events that are happening in Libya. But the residents there, the Libyans there, are really caught up in this mayhem, and I don't know where they're expecting their help to come from right now. They're caught up in the middle of world politics, and we see how those superpowers, or those even Western interests, are even acting, or whatever they are doing in Libya. They're not helping much with what the situation there in Libya. So very sad there. And I would like us to end with South Sudan. I haven't talked now. Cameroon and then South Sudan. And authorities in Switzerland have handed a suspended sentence to at least 5 members of Cameroon's President Paul Biya's security team. So apparently, Paul Biya went to Switzerland last week. He's supposed to stay in Europe for some time. From what the last time I was looking at this news, so apparently his security team went out and caused some harm to a journalist. They forgot that is not Cameroon. So they decided, because this journalist is speaking to the people, some protesters who had come to protest against the presence of President Paul Biya there in Geneva, and so they mishandled or they caused harm to this, the journalist, and they forgot that was not Africa, and they were apprehended. And so right now, 5 people of President Paul Biya's security team were arrested on Tuesday in Geneva for alleged assault to a journalist. The Swiss newspaper Tribune Geneva reports that the 5 men appeared in court yesterday, and a 6th member of the team, who is a woman, has been released. She held a diplomatic passport. So now let's just see how that will work out. Remember, President Biya right now is in Switzerland. I don't know if he'll be going to other European countries, but from the information from his office said he will be in Europe for some time. I don't know if he's seeking he's gone there for medical attention or he's there for holidaying, but it's not under official duties. I remember Paul Biya has been having serious health problems. Every now and then he's been out of the country, and for last year they were counting 60 days he was actually out of the country. After he was elected, last year, 60 days he was out of Cameroon. So he leads when he's not even there. So it's not... they did not give exact time, how much time he'll be staying in Europe, but there you go, the leaders we have here in Africa. And of course, Nigeria, the biggest African economy, announced on Wednesday that they will sign the African Free Trade Agreement on the coming Africa Union Summit. Nigeria has been very hesitant. They did not want to be part of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. But now I think President Buhari has made up his mind and he wants to be part of that. And remember, the AFSFTA aims to eliminate tariffs between member states, creating a market of 1.2 billion people with a combined GDP of more than 2.2 billion US dollars. So this will be a very strong financial market, especially that will, I think that they're trying to do like what the AU is doing or something like that. So this will be very good for us, or something like NAFTA. I don't know if you've had things like that, these trade unions. So trade agreements and blocks across the world. So this, I think, will be good for Africa. And we end with South Sudan, and where the Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly has warned members of Parliament against speaking to the media without permission. Remember, it's just last week that members of Parliament heckled the Finance Minister and Economic when he was actually scheduled to give a speech in Parliament to present the 2019-2020 budgets for the fiscal year 2019-2020 because the MPs really they said, civil servants have not been paid in this country for 6 months. So South Sudan has been going through its own financial problems, same as Zimbabwe, and the civil servants have not been paid for 6 months. And so the lawmakers were very upset, because I would think also they have not received their salaries that long. And so when the finance minister came to Parliament to present the 2019-2020 fiscal budget, they did not take it very kindly. So now the Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly has come out to warn members of Parliament in South Sudan to stop speaking to the media without his permission. Come on, South Sudan, that's a bit too early. Gagging the media, really? So how do you gag a whole house not to speak? South Sudanese have a right to know what is happening in that house. South Sudanese needs to get the views of the people that is representing them there in the parliament. So now the Speaker coming out and barring the members of Parliament not to be talking to the media, I think this is just, I don't know if it will happen. And particularly, I think this was directed to Honorable Durai Mabor, the youth member of Parliament who represents Rumbek East in Western Lakes, who had demanded for accountability for the past budget and proper plan for the next year. So the reason why actually there was a protest when the Minister of Finance came to read the budget is because they're saying the last year's budget was not well accounted for. So they wanted the minister to first account for the last year's budget, the 2018-2019 budget, before he could come and give his budgetary for the year 2019-2020. So that is what made him do that. So that is just the latest from here in Africa. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. and for all of you who have kept us company since the beginning of the show. So hopefully you can meet here in our next bulletin. But for now, my name is Miriam Ogotu, and it is bye-bye.
And as a finance person, we always believe in numbers. So let me share with you a few numbers. When Bob came in 2010, we had 15.8 million customers. He doubled that number. By the time he went to be with the Lord, we had 32 million customers. Our turnover grew by 199%, from 83.9 billion to 250.9 billion. Our net income grew by 319%, growing from 15.1 billion in 2010 to 63.3 billion in 2019. And somebody spoke about the taxman. The total tax that was paid to the Kenya government during his tenure was 565 billion shillings. It tripled essentially from 29 billion annually to almost 100 billion annually. The dividends that came to the people of Kenya, to the government, was 77.5 billion. And that does not include the proposed dividends that will be placed before the shareholders this September of 26.2 billion. Our share price hovered around 2.75 shillings to 6 shillings in the first year of his service, and it reached a high of 30.5 shillings this year, making a valuation of the company to rise from the 2 billion at which we floated the company to 11.2 billion, and those are dollars. So from 200 billion shillings to 1.1 trillion shillings. M-Pesa, at the time he took over, transacted 814 billion a year. In that year, it's risen to 11.7 trillion shillings, essentially a trillion shillings a month. The M-Pesa transactions. So you can see the impact that this man has had, his leadership has had on the company and on the people of Kenya. Esther spoke here about the customers, his agents, and there are so many businesses that have been created because he managed Safaricom in such a way that it became embedded in the Kenyan economy. And he also had a social impact on many people. He was just an ordinary guy, a guy who went to the streets, somebody who took us to jazz, somebody who developed this young musical talent that is in this country, somebody who touched all lives. He introduced Wi-Fi in matatus just so that the common man was able also to transact business on his commute to work. So today we honor a great man. We honor a family man, a leader, a friend to whom we owe a debt of gratitude. And so we say, thank you very much, Bob. Asante sana. Umetenda wema, umeenda zako. Lala salama, Bob.
We've done very well, and we need to bring this to an end. But just before we watch a video, and then later invite His Excellency, the Deputy and the President, to bring their condolences and to eulogize this great man, allow me to give this time. Thank you for your patience. Kindly remain patient. I know the service is getting longer than we thought, but I think this is the day we celebrate Bob. And so, Wamboi, I would like to invite you now to give your message before we listen to a video.
just in case.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Bob liked to quote His Excellency John Mahama, who once told him of power and succession that one must leave when the applause is loudest. Bob left when the applause was loudest. There is a man I would like to thank for reminding me in the midst of my grief that Bob was a different sort of person. On Tuesday, as our convoy made its way to carry a call for Bob's cremation, an elderly gentleman in a bright orange jacket stood on the side of the road, raised his right arm in the air in salute. As our convoy slowed down, he shouted, "Bob, we love you. You have done well. Go well, Bob." It was someone that I will probably never meet again, a Kenyan like myself who felt that his duty that morning was to stand on the side of the road and announce to the world that Bob had left a mark in his life. Nothing more. This morning, I'd like to read a speech to you that Bob gave to a group of eager children. I have adapted it a little to suit today's celebration. The message is simple but important, and one that I feel epitomizes the idea behind the man I fondly called Mr. Collymore. The story is lifted from Horton Hears a Who by Dr. Zeus, a speech by Bob Collymore in 2013. A person's a person, no matter how small. One of my favorite stories is about an elephant that hears little people on a speck of dust shouting for help. The elephant does everything in his power to protect the speck of dust because the little people who live on that speck of dust have asked for his help. In a gentle way, the elephant sets out to help the little people. The elephant places the speck of dust on a clover so that he can carry the speck to safety. But no one else can hear the voices coming from the speck of dust on the clover. Not the kangaroo and his baby kangaroo, not the monkeys or the eagle or any of the other larger animals in the jungle. He is made fun of by the kangaroo, and eventually the clover with the speck of dust is taken from him by a troop of monkeys and carried away by a swift eagle. Eventually, the unforgiving eagle throws the clover with the little people on it into a huge field of clovers. The poor elephant, who has been chasing after the eagle, searches and searches all 3 million clovers in that field, night and day, until he finds his clover with a speck of dust and the little people on it. The elephant does not rest until he is sure that the little people are safe. The elephant refuses to give up on little people, even though everyone else around him has. He stands by what he believes and defends it. He defends little people even when the animals threaten to cage the elephant for hearing the small voices. When I was a little boy, my grandmother took in children whose parents could not take care of them. I remember sharing a bed with children and sometimes waking up when none of them had peed in bed. Growing up, I had little brothers and sisters who I wasn't related to except through love. My grandmother was like the elephant that heard the noise from the small people on that speck of dust. She didn't have much. We were poor, but she reminded me that whatever little we had, we could always share it. She did this because a person's a person, no matter how small. I look out at you this morning. I wonder, do you want what is best for this world? Well, you see, wanting what is best for this world isn't only about saving the world. It's also about the little things that you can do to make a big difference. It's about helping because you can. The company I work for, Safaricom, helps people because it can. We go out of our way to bring fresh water to villages that don't have it. We take medical camps to places where there are no hospitals. We build schools where children are being taught under a tree. We work in those schools because we can make a difference. We know that selling airtime has no value if the world cannot be a better place. We work with those students because we want the best for our world by giving those students the opportunity to be whatever they dream about becoming. It is not because their parents refuse it for them. It is because we live in a world where some people have a lot and some people have very little. It is a blessing to have a lot. It is a blessing to have a roof over your head, shoes on your feet, food for your stomach, and a bed to get into tonight. But the biggest blessing is that you can do a lot with what you have, no matter your size. You can do a lot especially for others who don't have very much. In my favorite story about the elephant and the speck of dust, the elephant is big and has the ability to make people listen, and he uses that ability. He knows he has to protect the people smaller than him on that speck of dust because a person's a person, no matter how small. And the thing is, you're never too small to make a difference in this world. At the end of my favorite story, the elephant is able to save the little people because the smallest of them speaks out and yells for help. In the end, it is the voice of the smallest person on that small speck of dust that saves all the little people and the elephant. Sometimes, all you have to do is to speak up when you think something is not fair. Speaking up is the basic idea of activism. It is calling something out that is wrong so that you can find a way to change it, to make it right. Speaking out is one way of making things right. Doing what we can is another way. We can do a lot by being considerate of our friends and family, our neighbors, our little brothers and sisters, and our surroundings. We need to remember to see each other, to say hello, and to say thank you. Being considerate means caring how you treat yourself, others, and what is around you. You have to be gentle. The big elephant could easily have crunched the speck of dust with little people on it. He was so big that he couldn't see the little people, but he was gentle with them, and this is what saved them. But being kind and considerate to others can make you stand out in an unexpected way. As you begin to shine because you know what you want and you stand for what you believe in, you will start to meet more and more people who will not like you. There will be those who will envy you, those who make fun of you, those who try to make you feel guilty for being who you are. So here's my advice. Never be ashamed of who you are. Never apologize for what you have. Never let people decide how you should feel about yourself. Be proud of yourself and your achievements. Believe in yourself first. Stand up for what you believe in. Speak out when you think something is not fair. Be considerate to those around you, especially for who and what is smaller than you. Because a person's a person, no matter how small. Ordinarily, when we pay respect to those we love, we give 1 minute of silence. Bob has chosen to give us all 8 minutes of music. The piece that is about to play, Adagio for Strings by Samuel Barber, was his request for his memorial and a gift to you all.
It is now my honor and pleasure to welcome the Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto, who will in return welcome His Excellency the President. Welcome.
Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, Your Excellency, First Lady, Wambui Korimo, and the family, the Right Honorable former Minister of the United Kingdom, former Vice President Mudiawori, former Vice President Musalia Mudavadi, former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, political leaders present, church leaders, business leaders, ladies and gentlemen. The last time I had an interaction with Bob Colimo was about a month ago, when he visited me with a friend. Of a life very well lived. But it is difficult to reconcile Bob Colimo, who we all knew had this terminal condition and that he had not long to live. But when you met Bob Colimo, he behaved, he interacted as though he was going to live forever. It was quite a paradox. And it goes to demonstrate his courage and what he stood and lived for. Bob Colimo was not just a business leader in Kenya. He was not just a successful corporate business leader in Kenya. He inspired and influenced government policy. Allow me to just mention two occasions. On one occasion, when we were thinking about our education system and the reform that was required in our education system and our re-engineering of our education so that it responds more to the needs of industry, that inspired us to think about technical education, competence-based education, as is being rolled out now. Bob Colimo became a big source of inspiration because here came a man without a university degree who ran successfully the most profitable enterprise in Kenya. On a second occasion, sometime in 2014, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta was leading us through the process of thinking about how we can reform our police and what we needed to do to improve the conditions of service for our policemen. And we went through various motions to look at their insurance, to look at many of the aspects that contribute to their conditions of service. And I remember having this discussion with the former IG, and we got to a stage when we had done many of the things, and we ran into a situation that we could not manage because we were informed by our police that they have an old communication system that sometimes even criminals had a way of listening in. And so something needed to be done. When we explained to His Excellency the President, he told us, leave this one to me. I will have a chat with my friend Bob Colimo. The rest is history. The result is that today we have a modern camera surveillance system and a modern police communication system. That is how far Bob Colimo influenced government policy. And so it is a befitting occasion for us to celebrate this great person who became a Kenyan, probably more Kenyan than many of us. And of course, Bob Colimo was extraordinary because apart from all the time that he spent making sure that Safaricom was ahead of the game, was a business leader, was making profit, he also had time for art and music, which was his passion. And of course, I agree with Joshua, who said here that jazz and classical music is quite a scale up in terms of music in Kenya. Joshua said for the people who think about rumba, and Kofi Olomide and that group, it was quite something. And of course, it was more to those of us who our international scope of music was Mwanza Town Choir and Choir ya Morogoro. So it was quite something for us. And apart from what he did in Safaricom, he introduced us to some things which are new. And as has been said by many people here, Bob Colimo is in a class of his own. And we celebrate his life and the moments that he spent with us. To the family, Bob's courage and the way he did things should be an inspiration to you as a family to look at the situation before you with the courage of Bob and know the things he held dear and carry his legacy into the future. Before I request His Excellency the President to make his remarks, let me, on behalf of all the other leaders here, request with a lot of humility the former Prime Minister of the UK to come and make some remarks. Your Excellency, Tony Blair. Sorry for the ambush. It was instructions from the president.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Wambui, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually a great honor for me to say a few words in memory of Bob. When I was preparing to come to Kenya earlier this week, and I heard the news of Bob's passing, I immediately wrote a letter to Wambui, and my office said to me, so who was this person? He was the head of a telecom company. And I said, yes, he was. He was the head of a telecom company. And he was a great head of a telecom company. But much more important, he was a great human being and a wonderful example of how a good life can be led. So what I remember about Bob from my conversations with him, oh, one other thing, by the way, I know that tailor the man spoke about. I actually did have a conversation with Bob once about that tailor. I know that tailor. I use that tailor. He's a great tailor. But my wife, who is a believer in equality, is still buying clothes on the basis of that tailor's suits. So Bob was someone who was a great leader. But when you die in the prime of life, people are remembering you as if you were still there and with us, as if you were still a vibrant human being before us. And all I can say is that for any of us here, when our time comes, as it surely and will come, if we are able to provoke even a fraction as much sincerity in admiration, genuine grief at loss, and genuine celebration at example, we will be very lucky indeed. Thank you so much for having me here.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to request His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya to come and eulogize his friend. Your Excellency, sir.
Please be seated. Thank you. Wambui, the kids, the entire Collymore family, fellow mourners, I'm here today, first and foremost, to join all of you in celebrating a great life, a man who one can say truly lived life, and lived that life not just in service of himself, his family, but in service of society. Bob was a man born in Guyana, yes, traveled via the United Kingdom to various destinations across the globe, but finally set foot and settled in Kenya 10 years ago. And he has made a contribution, as some have said here, greater than many who are born, bred, and lived in Kenya throughout their lives. There's three things I can say Bob loved. A fourth one I can also say, but I don't want to mention that here. Amongst many other things. But I am certain Bob loved Kenya. He loved it as his home country. Bob loved Safaricom as if it was his own, a part of his family. And Bob loved his wife and his children dearly. Like I said, the fourth one I won't mention, but some of you here know what it is. We have lost a friend. We have lost a part of our soul. And even as we celebrate, there is still pain of being left by somebody who cared so passionately about the things that he did. About 3 weeks ago, I was on a trip to Canada. Time differences and everything. So at some strange hour, consistent, I said, for 2 days in a row, 2 o'clock in the morning, registered, called Bob Collymore, I was wondering. So on the second day, I picked it up and I'm asking him, Bob, why are you calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning? He says, I didn't realize you were traveling. So I said, yeah, I am, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning where I am. So can I call you when I get back? And he says, no, I've got something quite urgent I want to discuss with you, but I suppose I can wait until you get back. But I just wanted to tell you, I made you a promise that I'd hang on for another year with the company, but I think I'm going to break that promise. So I told him why. I said, we'll talk about it when you get back. I started asking myself a couple of questions and says, but please don't tell anybody what I've just said. We'll talk about it when you're back. So I get back. I give him a call. You're back. I said, yeah. So I went over to the house. Found him there, calm. How's everything? Everything's fine. But like I said, I'm going to have to break my promise. And he's saying it with a smile on his face. So I thought, Wambui is put you under pressure, Because he kept telling me, I don't think Wambui will allow me. But so I said, she succeeded, right? He says, no, it's not quite that. But I don't think I have more than a couple of weeks to go. So I said, but still a lot of things that we can try and do. How can we? He said, no, I've given up. I've tried everything. And I have accepted that my time has come. So we spent a whole afternoon. And my biggest thing was, why are you talking to me about Safaricom, what about you? I says, no, my chapter is closed. And I have accepted it. So all I want to know is, how is the future of this company? What is its future? What's going to happen? And we spent almost 3-4 hours talking about nothing else but what he saw as his vision, his hope for the company, his dreams and what he thought I should be focused on in terms of my own legacy as President of the Republic, the focus on the focus on corruption, and a fight that must be won, the issue of how do we deal with the moral fabric of our society that has collapsed, You know, at the end of the day, I said, you know, Bob, are you sure you want to continue? He said, no. If you're not in a rush, I'm not in a rush. Let's continue. And we had a wonderful, wonderful afternoon together. And when we finished, I asked him, so what can I do for you? You can't do anything for me. I don't need anything. I've sorted out my life. I've sorted out my issues. But the only thing you can do for me is make sure that you all take care of Wambui and the kids. That's all I want. I'm not interested in anything else. Well, we're here, and it's finally happened. I've lost a very good friend. My one disappointment, I was supposed to have gone back to collect something that had been reserved for a special friend. So Peter, Kenneth, Aigara and crew, you have to pay. That didn't belong to you. But say that we have lost a great friend, a champion for Kenya, a champion for young people, a champion for the arts. May the Almighty God rest his soul in eternal peace. Thank you very much.
For a second or few, I want you to stretch your legs. I know you've been tired, but we are bringing this to an end. Now take your seat, please. Thank you very much for all the tributes. They have taken long, but they were very important. I don't think we'll invite you here again to do this.